welcome you tonight to the regularly scheduled February 10th City Council meeting. If you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. And welcome. We have citizens' comment sign-up sheet, and Ms. Whittleton has signed up, so if you would come up and give us your comments, please.
Good evening. Thank you for considering my comments. I've gone over tonight's packet and find that I have concern regarding further annexation, not just tonight's petition for annexation, but any and all annexation that does not bring a positive financial impact to the city. In considering residential annexation, the revenue brought to the city is minimal. How will that impact our city that has not yet caught up with the cost of previous annexation? I am concerned that we are not currently maintaining our infrastructure to acceptable levels and that the addition of more areas to service will add to the burden. I ask that the positives and negatives be weighed carefully with a keen eye towards possible liabilities to make sure annexation has a positive or at least a neutral impact if pursued. Speaking of maintaining what we already have, I am concerned over the condition of some of our roads, particularly Bethel. The holes are not navigable without risking vehicular front-end damage or the outside chance of triggering an airbag. This is a liability to the city and its citizens. It is my understanding that we have significant dollars in our street fund that could at least address the immediate need. If there is some reason due to time of year or such that these holes cannot be repaired, I suggest an immediate effort to visibly identify those holes with some kind of warning indication, perhaps a circle of white paint around the perimeter. We consider so many issues in our city for expansion, and yet we are sadly lacking in being proactive in correcting these conditions. I have even heard people suppose these conditions are not being addressed so that there will be less objection to increasing revenue sources, such as license tabs. As a footnote, I understand the intersection at Bethel and Lund will get refurbished this summer. However, it does not extend to some of the problem areas farther south. And overall, in the interim, something needs to be done to warn drivers. Thank you for serving our city.
Okay, thank you. Now, that's the only citizen sign up, but if you would still like to address, please raise your hand. And, yes, sir.
I certainly hope that I didn't hurt the professional feelings of Ms. Isaacson last time, but I still have concerns about raising the water rates based on the internal rate study that was ginned up at a breakfast meeting. We're double dipping. The numbers are loosey-goosey. Is that a term I'm familiar with? It's important that we have a good plan for our infrastructure. It's not. We need to be able to identify the projects that we're going to do based on this gap study and do them, not just gouge the public for another doubling of their water rates. And that's what's happened over the last 4 years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else, member of the public, like to address the council at this juncture? Last chance? All right, seeing none, we'll move on then. Approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I would like to make some adjustments in the agenda. Under the consent agenda, I would like to move items C and D to our first business items, making them A and B. I would like business item K to be moved to, we would have what are C and D would now be A and B. What's A would become C, and K would become D.
So you're saying in between the current A and B?
In between the current A and B. And then I would like to move business item J, and I would like it to precede what is currently business item B.
Just get a kind of a point of the way we have been doing it. We've been usually taking one change at a time and voting on it is probably be the better way to do it. So would you start with your first change, and we'll go ahead and make a motion. And
Okay, I move to remove from the consent agenda items C and D and place them as the first two items on the business items section.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion?
Becca, I was going to ask the same. Thank you.
So A and B on the consent agenda will be moved to A and B on the business items.
Correct.
Business item A and B will now be moved down to C and D. And it, of course, drops everything else.
It drops everything else down,
It drops
correct.
everything else.
Mr. Mayor, I believe you said A and B in the consent agenda item when it's
C and D.
C and D.
C and D.
Sorry, C and D will be the new A and B. Okay, we're going to be voting on that first motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Make that change.
Okay, I would like to move under business item K. I would like to move it to directly after what is now listed, or what was originally listed as business item A. So C and D become A and B, what's A becomes C, and K becomes D.
I'll second that motion.
K becomes D. I know I'll be confused when we get to these things, so bear
The
with me on
sandwich
this.
between the current A and B.
It's just sandwiched between the current A and B.
All right. Motion and a second. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carries.
Yes, and Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a motion to move what is currently business item J and place it directly after the old business item K. And for the public, the reason I'm doing this is all of those business items grouped together, and rather than dealing with them at different points of our agenda, I think it's going to be easier for everyone to follow if we do them together.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to move J. No, wait a minute.
Yes.
Would you repeat?
Yes.
Jay.
To the end of the business.
It's going
items.
to go
No.
directly in front of what is currently B.
Jay?
It follows the K.
It follows the
Correct.
K, correct.
Oh, up there.
Yeah.
Oh, I get it. Okay.
You still second, Mr. Childs?
Directly in
I think
front
I will,
of K. J. Well, I hope this makes it clearer. We'll work through it. So, all right. Any other comments on this change? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, that changes nay.
The B is
Now, Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a motion that we approve the agenda as amended.
I have one more
Oh,
addition, please. I'd like to make a motion to add excusing Mr. Clausen from tonight's meeting. He's out of town on business, and add that to our consent agenda after what's currently F.
Okay. Add
Second.
excusal for Mr. Clausen. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That motion carries. We've added that to the last item on our consent agenda. Okay, we're back to the main motion.
Which has not been made yet, but Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Okay, we have a amended agenda, and we're going to be voting on its approval. All those, are any other comments or any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those in favor say aye. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, we were saying aye.
Oh,
We jumped
Opposed,
the gun, I'm
nay?
sorry.
I don't know that any of us voted.
okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And that motion carries. Okay, we're at the amended consent agenda item now.
I move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll be voting on the amended consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We have a approved agenda, an amended agenda, and amended consent agenda. We don't have any presentations listed for tonight, but we do have a public hearing, and the public hearing is to adopt ordinance establishing park rules. And Mr. Bond, could you lead us into this, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The proposed park rules ordinance is intended to specify the rules and regulations regarding public parks in the city of Port Orchard. The ordinance has been refined based on input from the Public Properties Committee and from the City Council through a series of committee and work-study meetings. A park rules ordinance is needed in order to enforce posted park rules. Upon passage, the city can work to create park rules signage, including for the city's recently opened McCormick Park. Staff recommends that the City Council conduct a public hearing and approve the park rules ordinance as presented.
Okay, thank you. I was still marking my agenda. So, all right, appreciate it. And we're hereby open the public hearing on the park rules. Nobody has signed up for comments on this public hearing. Once again, though, I would like to invite you to raise your hand, be identified, come up, and if you do have comments, make them at this time. Okay, seeing no one last chance, seeing no one. All right, hereby close the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I move to approve the Parks Rule Ordinance as presented.
I would second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the established park rules as presented. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of establishing the park rules say aye.
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 Opposed, nay.
Nay.
The record show that 2 were in opposition. That motion carries. We're in public hearing item B, and it's a public hearing to adopt a resolution and approval of amendment number 1 to contract 08313. Mr. Dorsey, could you please tell us about this one?
Thank you, Mayor, council members. On October 22nd, 2013, the City of Port Orchard and the Sinclair LLC entered into a development agreement, contract 083-13, for the Southwest Sydney Plaza development, whereby the city agreed to provide a credit per equivalent residential unit allowed under current code against the sewer capital facility charge for the cost of design, engineering, and construction of the Pottery Sewer Pump Station, constructed and dedicated to the city for regional benefit. The purpose of this first amendment to the development agreement is to address actual costs for the task and to provide an accounting of the future credit of the capital facility charge versus the current reimbursement amount. Tonight's public hearing and subsequent council action for the first amendment to the development agreement with the Sinclair LLC is a critical piece to the overall sanitary sewer service capacity issue for the joint planning area. As a reminder, RCW 3670B.200 provides that a city shall only approve a development agreement following a public hearing. The public hearing was duly noticed. For clarification, please find the following sewer capital facility charge financial summary. The total maximum allowable cost, $1,056,096.95. The total collected, $807,615.86, and that's the reimbursement amount. Remaining allowable future credit is $248,481.09. Staff recommends that the mayor conduct a public hearing and that the council authorize the mayor to execute the First Amendment to the development agreement, contract C08313, by and between the City of Port Orchard and the Sinclair LLC for the Southwest Sydney Plaza development.
Okay. I hereby open the public hearing. Nobody, again, has signed up for this public hearing, but once again, I ask you to raise your hand if you have comments for the council. Last chance. Raise your hand if you have comments. All right, seeing none. What's your pleasure on this, council? Yes, Mr. Patonson.
I move to authorize the mayor to execute the First Amendment to the development agreement C083-13 by and between the City of Port Orchard and the Sinclair LLC for the Southwest Sydney Plaza development.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Now we're open for discussion or comments. Discussion or comments?
Well, could you explain exactly what the amendment is?
The amendment has to do with the original development agreement was established based on the municipal code as a credit. During the process, because in this particular case, the development of the Southwest Sydney Plaza apartments and those building permits issued for that development were actually concurrent with the actual design and construction of the pump station. Normally, under our code, you would have a credit in that they would build the pump station and then have those numbers identified, and then as they pulled building permits, you would have the credit that would go against the building permit. In this case, they were pulling building permits and they were paying those capital facility charges. So the amendment deals with basically creating the allowance for both a credit for the future remaining allowance and a reimbursement for what was already paid. So,
Mr. Dorsey, didn't they, in essence, they didn't know what the cost was going to be when they started pulling the permits. They just agreed that they would build the sewer station for us, and now we're coming back and they're saying, here's what it cost us to build it. We want to get a credit back for what we paid you.
Well, a reimbursement.
A reimbursement. And then there's going to be a developer's agreement on top of, or excuse me, a latecomers agreement for other developers to come back and reimburse them for part of this too.
Well, no, they're not going to do a latecomers. They're going with the capital facility charge. I mean, they have the option to pursue a latecomers for that difference right now between the $1 million that's the maximum allowable and the current collected, which is the $807. So there's that $248,000 that's still remaining.
Okay.
If they only use $150,000 of that for their future retail, that they get as a credit now because we have the numbers established. After they get reimbursed, theoretically they could put a latecomers for that remaining $100,000, but that's up for them. The code allows them to do that.
It changed from 9 to 10 buildings.
Right, and then there was one of the number of units stayed the same, but they created instead of 9 apartment units in a rec center, they ended up taking the number of units and creating 2 buildings out of the same number of units. So we had to change the the agreement to reflect that as well. So it's basically bookkeeping.
It's pretty simple. It changed a credit to a reimbursement.
Yeah.
And it changed 9 buildings to 10, but the number of apartment housing units stayed the same.
Right.
If I remember correctly, this is one of our capital projects that was on our capital facility plan. They couldn't move forward with their development unless this got built, so they built it on our behalf, and we are being reimbursed for that. Is that
right. This was a project that was actually identified as a need, as well as the sewer work, the project that we did 4 years ago. This was the main component to connect into what the city did 3 or 4 years ago to provide sewer into the joint planning area, which is the Sedgwick-Sydney Basin. And without this improvement and without the improvement that the city did a few years ago and then picking up the Albertsons pump station, we would actually be in a moratorium. We would have been in a moratorium, development moratorium. So this is a critical piece of infrastructure that this developer in essence funded the design, funded the construction, and our code allows for a reimbursement or a credit.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to make the comment that when I read the staff report, and I haven't read the revised one we got this evening, but the original one that was with my packet, I didn't realize we were reimbursing the $800,000. I assumed that had been a credit. When I read this, I understood that we were defining the $248,000 number. That all made sense to me. It wasn't until we got the additional agenda item with the budget amendment, which is our old number K, that I thought the issue got a little more muddy for me.
Yeah. Well,
so I appreciate your explanation.
Yeah, in the staff report, I did have the total collected of the 807, and I put in parentheses the reimbursement amount.
Right.
Yeah.
It did not enter my mind that was
what was going on.
What was going on.
So.
Okay. Other discussion? Other comments? Clarification? All right. We'll be voting then for voting adoption of resolution approval of amendment number 1 to contract 08313 Sinclair LLC. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nay. Let the record show we have one member abstaining, and then.
I don't know that we can do that.
Can you
You can't abstain.
Yes, Ken.
To the best of my knowledge, the only time you can abstain is when we're voting on minutes and you weren't present. But
Well,
I've been
I read
called
about
on
this today, and you can abstain for informational reasons.
Is he recusing himself?
Yeah.
Right. I tend to agree that you
But
have.
you can recuse yourself.
No,
You can vote no.
Not an issue of.
I think advisory.
Hang on just a minute. We'll try to get an answer for that. But
But
Or if you were not at a prior meeting when the original item was discussed. So we're going to check that out. It's in our Port Orchard Municipal Code.
Well, what I read about it today in a couple of different places is that if you have problems with the information provided, you can abstain.
I have it here. It's 2.04160. Each member present must vote on all questions put to the council except as to matters with respect to which such council member has a personal financial interest, matters presented for council consideration by an entity other than the city in which the council's determination is advisory only, or meeting minutes of a meeting that the council member did not attend.
Okay, well, I don't agree with that, but I'll vote no.
all right. Thank you. That's good information. Appreciate the help. Let the record show that we have one member voting no. That motion carries. Okay, that takes care of our public hearings for tonight. We're on business item 7A, and that's approval of bill of sale for Pottery Pump Station. Mr. Dorsey.
Thank you. As required, the bill of sale for the Pottery Pump Station, designed and constructed in accordance with the Southwest Sydney Plaza Development Agreement by the Sydney LLC via C08313, must be executed by the mayor. The execution of the bill of sale will allow for the capitalization of this vital regional sewer infrastructure by the city. Staff recommends that the council authorize the mayor to execute the bill of sale for the Pottery Pump Station with Sinclair LLC for the Southwest Sydney Plaza development.
Okay, yes, Mr. Patonsu.
I move to authorize the mayor to execute the bill of sale for the property pump station with the Sinclair LLC for the Southwest Sydney Plaza development.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We're opening the floor for discussion or comments. Seeing no discussion or comments, we'll be approving the bill of sale for Pottery Avenue Pump Station with Sinclair LLC. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay.
Nay.
The record shows there's one in opposition. That motion carries. We'll move on to item B, approval of bill of sale of the Southwest Sydney Plaza mixed-use development, water, sanitary sewer, and roadway improvements. Mr. Dorsey, please tell us about this one.
Thank you. As required, the bill of sale for the Southwest Sydney Plaza mixed-use development, water, sewer, and roadway improvements must be executed by the mayor. The execution of the bill of sale will allow for the capitalization of these utility and roadway improvements by the city's infrastructure, or to the city's infrastructure. Staff recommends that the council authorize the mayor to execute the bill of sale for the Southwest Sydney Plaza mixed-use development, water, sanitary sewer, and roadway improvements with Sinclair LLC.
Okay.
I move to authorize the mayor to execute the bill of sale for the Southwest Sydney Plaza mixed-use development, water, sanitary sewer, and roadway improvements with the Sinclair LLC.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Open the floor for discussion or questions. Seeing no discussion or questions, we're going to be voting on approval of bill of sale for Southwest Sydney Plaza mixed-use development, water, sanitation, sewer, and roadway improvements. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Let the record show that pass. Everybody is in. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to item C of the business item, adoption of ordinance related to latecomers agreement. Mr. Dorsey, could you tell us about this one?
Okay. Pursuant to 3591 RCW, at the request of an owner of real property, the city must contract with the owners for the construction or improvements to the city's water and or sewer facilities, which the owner elects to install solely at the owner's expense. There are a number of restrictions imposed by the state law on such contracts, including but not limited to a requirement that the city's installation specifications are met, RCW 359102. Currently, the city has no procedure in place for an owner of real property to enter into a contract of this nature, known as a latecomers agreement. The purpose of the ordinance is to establish the procedure for the city to enter into a latecomer agreement and establish the conditions associated with such contracts in Chapter 1308 of the Port Orchard Municipal Code. Staff recommends that the City Council adopt an ordinance establishing new Chapter 1308 Latecomers Agreement of the Port Orchard Municipal Code.
Okay, what's your pleasure, Council?
Am I? Okay. Then I should make the motion. Move to adopt the an ordinance, thereby establishing new Chapter 13.08 Latecomer Agreements of the City of the Port Orchard Municipal Code.
Second.
All right, we have a motion. Second, is there any discussion, questions? Yes,
Mr. Dorsey, haven't we done latecomers agreements before?
We probably have.
Okay. Thought we had.
Talk about it.
We have.
Any
Guess we should have a policy for them.
We probably should.
Any other comments or questions?
I would just like to note what I think is a typographical error on the second page under E. It says, and who many only do so, and I think it should be who may only do so.
Correction? Any other corrections or questions?
The other question I had was basically for you, Mr. Darcy, and we talk about the purpose of this chapter is to implement yada yada yada, and to describe the process for a developer, property owner, a county, or the city of Port Orchard to obtain a latecomer's agreement. I guess I just wondered, did we need to address West Sound Utility District in there at all?
Do you want me to address that?
Yes.
This ordinance was drafted consistent with a new state law, or actually an amended state law, and it now allows for counties and cities to take advantage of the latecomer agreement process. There's no mention at all of any other municipality in that.
Okay.
It's not saying that they might not be able to do it. We're just not going to specifically call them out.
I think I misread that. I just wanted to make sure that we had everyone that may be involved covered, but she answered my question. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? We're ready to vote. Adopting the ordinance related to latecomers agreement. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. That motion carries. We're approval of contract with TSI. Mr. Dorsey, could you tell us about that?
No, we're moving to K. It goes in there.
Oh,
A or D?
K is now D.
The old
Yes.
K.
okay, that's where K on the last page is moved up now?
Yes.
Okay, so will be first reading of ordinance amending the 2015 budget. Mr. Martin, could you?
Yes, sir. Mayor Mathis, members of the Port Orchard City Council, citizens of Port Orchard. As you're aware, historically we do a first half budget amendment in June and a second half budget amendment typically in December. But because of the interest in the Southwest Sydney Plaza and the amount of money involved, and that the developer would like to receive their reimbursement sooner rather than later, we're doing this budget amendment tonight. So actions involving amendments to the budget take two readings. This is the first reading of an ordinance amending ordinance number 02014, adopting the 2015 budget. The public may comment on the amendment following its presentation. The city budget is written to capture revenue and expense over the fiscal year. During the year, changes to the budget in both revenue and expenditures need to be recognized by budget amendment. This budget amendment or ordinance recognizes changes to a developer's agreement approved by council to provide a reimbursement for the sewer capital facilities charge paid by the developer and not credited at the time of application. A reimbursement payment was not anticipated at the time the 2015 budget was adopted. The sewer capital facilities charge consists of two components: the general facilities fee and the wastewater treatment facility fee, which are accounted for in two separate city funds and together comprise the sewer capital facilities charge. The cumulative reserve for water sewer fund number 403 accounts for the general facilities fee. The wastewater treatment facility fund number 632 accounts for the wastewater treatment facility component of the sewer capital facilities charge. The cumulative reserve for water sewer fund number 403 is a budgeted fund. The wastewater treatment facility fund number 632 is a trust and agency fund. Agency funds are used to report resources held by the government in a custodial capacity. Agency funds involve only the receipts, temporary investment, and remittance of fiduciary resources to individuals, private organizations, or other governments. As such, their use is restricted to that of a trust agreement and are not subject to budgetary requirements. The budget amendment, therefore, reflects the following: $380,000 from the Community Reserve for Water Sewer Fund number 403 for the general facilities fee component of the sewer capital facilities charge for developer reimbursement. The Utility Committee recommends moving an ordinance amending the 2015 budget forward for a second reading. Mayor Mathis.
Thank you. We are going to allow some comment at this point. So if anyone would like to make those comments, please raise your hand. Be identified.
Don't we need to get a motion on the floor first?
No, not for public comment.
Are we opening a public hearing?
No, on a budget amendment, all you have to do is allow the public the right to comment.
Okay.
So it's not a hearing, it's a reading.
Yeah. Okay, any public comments at this point? All right, seeing none, is there a motion? Yes.
I move to accept the first reading of an ordinance amending the 2015 budget for the City of Port Orchard and to direct staff to place an ordinance on the February 24th, 2015 agenda for a second reading and final adoption.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion, Mr. Patonsu? Have your hand up.
Well, the 380,000, only thing we're amending, I think it's important for us to recognize what we saw in the earlier public hearing item B, that the physical impact is 807,615 is the total impact. The other portion is going into the wastewater treatment plant, which isn't our budget, but it is affected. Still warranted that we refund that in that other action, but we should just make everybody aware of that.
The 400 and some thousand is in the wastewater treatment facility fund 632.
That's correct.
As I understand it, that's basically a reserve account.
It's a trust account.
It's a trust account. Was any of that $407,000 used or considered when we did any of our gap analysis for our sewer?
No.
No.
It's specific to the joint wastewater treatment facility, not the sewer utility proprietary fund.
And under the trust agreement, we have the right to withdraw that money and repay it to Sinclair LLC.
Yes, it's basically going to be a reversing transaction.
A reversing transaction.
There on a trust. In the city code, it says you're going to collect this money and you're going to put it in a fund to be used for the joint wastewater treatment facility. So you've set up a trust agreement in effect with a third-party government. That's the joint wastewater treatment facility. And that it comprises part of your budget. That shows in the budget document that we print each year, but it's not a fund that requires a revenue and an expenditure budget that's discretionary. The code's already set up. You're going to collect this fund, you're going to collect this money, and you're going to put it into the account, and it's going to be used for the joint wastewater treatment facility.
So I guess the good news is we didn't spend the $807,000.
We didn't spend any of it. It was all there.
And I guess to answer your earlier question, so as far as the gap analysis, so prior to the Katie Isaacson gap analysis, in the old sewer plan, this was one of the capital improvements, but that came off that list as we went through and updated the capital plan because this was a project that the developer was funding in reimbursement. So it was basically money in, money back out. Our net is zero.
If you say so.
Yes.
It appears, just having seen this tonight, that it's an unexpected expenditure / expense that would affect the budget for water sewer.
We should have never collected this money, Fred, Councilman Chang. This money was collected. They were given a credit originally. Had we known what the plant was going to cost, when they came in and paid for their permit, we would have deducted that portion of the charge off at that time. But they paid it at that time, so we collected it when it was never anticipated to be collected in any of the budget calculations.
It's really neutral at this point, other than we still owe them a credit for the remaining...
The $248,000.
Yes. If they had not built the substation, we would have a building moratorium in that area because we couldn't provide sewer service, and we would have gotten no connections. They built our substation, and we gave them credit for
building it.
For building
For the cost.
for the cost of building.
We gave them a credit for a charge that if we'd have taken the charge, we would have built the sewer plant.
So it sounds like you're saying it was an expected expenditure, but that didn't make it into the 2015 budget originally?
There is no expenditure here.
Okay.
There is no expenditure here.
But,
It's a reimbursement.
If I could, I just want to make sure that the public understands, is when they built the apartments out on Sedgwick and Sydney, we needed to upgrade part of our sewer infrastructure. The city was not in a position to do that. The developer was, and they agreed to do it. And as a result of that, we give them a credit for their actual hookup to the sewer. What happened is they were pulling permits, and we were charging them for these hookups. Now, it's very nice that they were able to pay for all the infrastructure at over $1 million and still pay us $807,000. They had the capacity to do that, and now we need to pay them back. And so that's what this does. The good news is we didn't spend the money. My question is, it seems to me that our process broke down a little bit. And so do we have anything that would remedy that not happening in the future?
Well, some of it's just language. If you just put credit / reimbursement, when they came in a situation like this, we'd have had the authority to reimburse them. Part of this is just language where we called it a credit and they need a reimbursement. So some of it's that simple. Other of it's to know exactly what the cost of the plant is before you build it, which we could work off of an engineer's estimate.
This was a situation where typically our code is set up to provide a credit, assuming that the facility is built before they start building their development, and then they get a credit to their fee, their connection charges. And this was a scenario where the development agreement was put in place based on the code, but they were building apartments faster than they were building the pump station. And so to answer your question, I would say that as we go through and work to update code, which I think is a major task, we'll look at adding that language and then have a better communication between Public Works and Finance on that, so that it doesn't happen again.
Just a question. What happened now, the 200 and some thousand that's sitting there now? They paid that in.
No, that's just a credit that they can take later.
Right, I was going there. That's so if they pull some more building permits on another project, they'll be getting reimbursed for that amount up till
Right. They'll pay
until
less
they
for
zero
the
that amount out.
They wouldn't get reimbursed. They just wouldn't have to pay the connection fee. And only,
Right,
it
okay,
only
right,
gets
right.
Sedgwick and
Okay,
Sydney.
bad choice of
Credit
word.
on our books now.
Yeah,
They'll just get a credit.
It's only for and it's also not for if they decided to do some other development in that basin. This is specifically to the remaining 14,000 square foot future retail pad, that they have the ability for a future credit up to that maximum amount.
Okay, good.
And I would say that if I knew then what I know now, we would have done it different.
Didn't it work though for the sake of expediency? I mean, we needed infrastructure built. They had the ability, they built it, and so I'm not necessarily opposed to, a credit or a reimbursement. I mean, it worked well for both parties in this particular case, and so
I just think we didn't know that it was that we had collected it.
Yeah. Right. I mean, to answer Councilman Cartwright, yes, the Rush Company, Sinclair LLC, was actually out of pocket, is currently out of pocket twice the amount, because they've both completely paid those fees, but yet still continue to fund the design and the construction. And so knowing that this is a regional facility for that entire Basin 2, and knowing that 6 years ago when the city approached the owners of that area to potentially form a ULID to get sewer to that area, and nobody stepped forward. When they decided to build those apartments there, they could have, did what they have done, or really the city would have said, well, you can't build those apartments. So in essence, they stepped up to build that infrastructure that was the main component to the piece that we had done 3 or 4 years ago. They finished that piece that diverted the sewage down our restricting trunk line H, which goes from Lippert to Tremont down the ravine. That was the restricting piece. So the city did the first part, which was separate the gravity flows and the sewage flows from Tremont to Lippert on Pottery. And now this pump station is now diverting all the flows up Pottery rather than down the old trunk line. So the city would have had no choice but to have established a development moratorium until we built that pump station. And so they stepped up and said, we want to do this project, we'll go ahead and build this infrastructure, and they were building their apartments at the same time. So I think just having the ability to have both credit and reimbursement in our municipal code moving forward and knowing, keeping a better track on when those permits come in, that we're double checking that, yes.
Mr. Mayor, may I make one more comment? And this is for the public. The 2 consent agenda items that I had removed from the consent agenda and put to the business items were 2 bill of sales. And that was the city purchasing the infrastructure from Sinclair LLC so that we can capitalize it. And I just wanted all of that transparent to the public, all of the action that we took on that issue tonight.
Any other comments, questions, discussion? All right, then. We have a motion on the floor to accept the first reading of ordinance amending the 2015 budget for the city of Port Orchard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Thank you. That motion carries. All right.
J.
Item J.
What is J?
Old J.
Old J.
Becomes 7E.
Oh, discussion.
No, are we on old B?
That's what
No.
I think we were. Yeah,
Old J is new E.
Yeah. 7J became 7E.
I knew that. Okay, so we're at J.
Right.
Everybody's in agreement on that. We're at J. Discussion 2016 comp plan update. Mr. Bond.
Yes.
I may throw this out to you, and you'll have to take a second to find it. But
no, I'm ready.
All right. Okay.
The comprehensive plan update process began in January of 2014 with the contracted assistance of a University of Washington graduate planning studio. The studio put together an initial conditions report, a public participation program, organized several community meetings and surveys, drafted a revised vision, land use, and housing element, and presented the work to a joint meeting of the Planning Commission and City Council in June of 2014. Since that time, staff has continued to revise those documents in consultation with the Planning Commission and has also worked to draft a revision to the economic development element. Staff is set to begin revising the parks element in-house and has hired consultants to assist, and I should say will hire consultants to assist since the agenda got rearranged. But we have consultants in line to help us update the utilities and transportation elements, as well as the capital facility plan. Since completion of the UW Studios work, public participation at meetings has been limited. At the January work study meeting, the City Council discussed options for being more engaged in the comprehensive plan update process, increasing public participation in the process, and increasing coordination with the Planning Commission concerning the update. A committee dedicated to the comprehensive plan was one suggestion made at the last work study meeting. However, the mayor expressed concerns about staff workload and wanted the opportunity to discuss the issue internally and look at alternatives. After reviewing the issue with staff, the mayor would like to propose the following approach. It is proposed that the city conduct 2 or more joint meetings of the Planning Commission and City Council to review progress to date on the comprehensive plan update. The first meeting would occur later this spring and would cover progress on updating the vision, land use, housing, and economic development elements of the comprehensive plan. A presentation would be made that would cover, which would include details on the restructuring of the document, updates on background information and data, updated land use goals and policies, updated housing goals and policies, would present the draft economic development element, would provide an overview of the strategy for future centers, and would provide an update on consultant progress and a timeline for completion of the consultant sections of the document. Following a presentation by staff, the Council, Planning Commission, and the public would have the opportunity to provide comment and ask questions concerning the changes to these elements. At this meeting, the comments received and the questions asked would be documented and would be remanded back to the Planning Commission for final revisions. In late summer or early fall, a second joint meeting would be held to discuss updates to the utilities, parks, natural systems, and capital facilities element. This meeting would include a presentation from the consultants and staff and would be followed with an opportunity for questions and comments from the Council, Planning Commission, and public. At this meeting, the comments received and the questions asked would be documented and would be remanded back to the Planning Commission for final revisions. This strategy is advantageous because it limits the number of meetings that the city would have to staff while providing an opportunity for the Planning Commission to hear council concerns firsthand. The type of presentation would also be more likely to get the public to turn out and could be set up for video recording so that people who are unable to attend can watch from home and provide comments after the fact. So the recommendation would be to potentially identify dates for a joint meeting of the Planning Commission and City Council for both the spring and summer and early fall, to get those on everybody's calendars now. And I don't know, Mayor, if you have anything to add to that.
Just that we truly appreciate, the fact that we, it seemed like we needed a little more input from the Planning Commission and the Council, and it just works well to do it all at one time, have both groups together. And that also works well with our staff workload. So any comments or any suggestions on times?
I have a comment.
Okay.
The comprehensive plan is the city's business development plan for the next 20 years. It's our guiding document. It needs to be treated as a working tool. This isn't just an exercise in making sure our comp plan is in compliance and then it sits on a shelf. This is the plan that will take our city forward. I am concerned that the mayor's City Council Planning Commission involvement and public process for the 2016 update of the comprehensive plan does not begin with Council Planning Commission and public input prior to the staff continuing their work. The mayor's plan, as stated in the staff report, calls for 2 or more joint Council Planning Commission meetings to review the staff's progress on work already begun, one in late spring and another in late summer or early fall. Without prior Council, Planning Commission, and public input, I am unsure how an intern and a staff member with less than 6 months' employment with this city can have a pulse on the appropriate direction to take our comprehensive plan. The reason for limiting the number of meetings is the staff is overburdened. My concern is that without a vision being articulated on the front end of the work, more time and more resources will be required to implement changes after the fact. Some of the questions that need to be addressed include, is it the intent of the city to increase our industrial footprint, or do we intend to partner with the Puget Sound Industrial Center, Bremerton? How does our city wish to encourage retail within its boundaries? Or is the city content to have retail develop only in the county? As an example would be east on Sedgwick or south on Sydney rather within the city. There are many issues which warrant a discussion at the front side of our comprehensive plan update. Prior preparation prevents poor performance. During the 2008 plan update, the Downtown Overlay District and the Tremont Corridor District each had a subcommittee which met for 3 months at the beginning of the process. The Government Overlay Districts Committee met for had approximately 6 public meetings. The McCormick Woods Park Plan Committee gathered for several months of planning. In each case, a joint and unified vision was defined and the end product was accepted by all. We should be working as a team, the council, the planning commission, the stakeholders, and the staff. We need to all be part of the journey and participate in the process. The South Kitsap School District is completing a strategic planning process for its 2035 vision. 2 Saturdays ago, it held a public workshop with over 300 in attendance to solicit input and gain support for its effort. The district also engages the public via an internet platform. The school district understands the importance of being part of their community. Again, prior preparation prevents poor performance. It's better to know where we're going before we put a lot of work into that journey. How we accomplish such joint planning and discussion does not have to be elaborate. I'm sure that we can find a reasonable solution that will accommodate everyone's needs, but the council and planning commission and the public should not be excluded from the front end work and the foundation that needs to be laid for our comprehensive plan.
Great. Just one comment. We've been working on parts of the comp plan for over a year already. Your analogy there that we need to start with this, participation. We've actually had quite a lot of public participation up to this point, and that's what the intent of the first meeting will be, is to lay out what has happened, what we have done, and take testimony. But I appreciate your opinion, and I think how we get where we want to be is what we disagree on. Not that we shouldn't have public participation. I think we should. But any other comments?
I just think it's important that we this evening get our calendars out then and get this. The state needs to happen sooner versus later. I agree that if we work too long on this process and don't get input till late, then we're not traveling in the right direction. Let's get on course early versus later, and I think it's probably the time for all of us. I don't know how we're going to facilitate that, and I think it's important that it's not a date that's just driven out to us, that it's a date that we can all agree on and make happen, whether it be one of our council meetings or our work study sessions. I don't know what that date is, but I think we need to decide on that sooner versus later.
And with that, I'd kind of like to know what kind of outreach or marketing or what we're going to do to encourage as many residents to participate on that date as possible. It's pretty telling for me that, South Kitsap School District can have 300 in attendance for a 2035 vision. I'd certainly like to try to see something like that for Port Orchard's public input as well.
We did have some nice input and public outreach when the University of Washington students were working on their project. They did a very nice job with that and did some nice work on the land element, and we compliment them for that. But since that time, the process has not been, we've not been engaged in it, and it has not been public. And I think that that's the piece for me that's missing, is I'm not sure how we can create this comprehensive plan until we have made some decisions about how we want the city to move forward.
So like brainstorming, and with all the principles. Mm-hmm. So how do you envision putting your ideas from what you've just read, and agreeing with Rob that we need to get this down and put some dates down? How do you see that going forward? Do you see more than 2 meetings? Do you see a meeting to establish a vision, and then
quite honestly, I think the meetings on the front side are more important than the updating meetings going on. I mean, it just seems to me that you need to spend some time understanding what you want the end product to look like. Where do you want to go? And I personally don't feel that we have done that. Now, perhaps we have, and I missed it.
I'd be in favor of a visionary meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's good to have the early and continuous involvement. I mean, for example, looking at last year's comprehensive plans, they did catch some of us by surprise. So I think if we can even that field where we're all comfortable with some of the concepts we're talking about, I think that is a good goal. Mm-hmm. And I'm just wondering if we want to plan a joint council commission meeting during a regularly scheduled planning commission meeting. I don't know if their agenda has been very heavy, or if it could accommodate one of these joint planning meetings.
Well, I think that was going to be one of my suggestions, would be a regularly scheduled planning commission meeting, but assuming that we go the route of having some joint meetings with the city council and planning commission, I said 2 or more meetings. I think a good place to start for this would be to sort of recap what work was done by the students and then what work has been done since then, and to have that more in a presentation with question and answer. I think following that up with more of a workshop setting where the council members sit around a table and actually talk about what has been presented and actually provide that sort of input, that might be a beneficial second step to take before we resume revising these documents. But I think there's a lot of concepts that have been introduced, and there has been a bit of public input, even on the economic development element in the way of surveys, but we just don't have the resources in-house to do big workshops or anything along those lines where we're actually getting the public into the room and taking them around the room and showing them different exhibits. We've also, the thing that may not be known is the Department of, Kitsap County Department of Health has been involved in providing us feedback, as have KEDA, and I think 1 or 2 other organizations that have had some participation in this. And so there's a lot of good ideas in there, and I think the revisions that have been initiated are positive, but I certainly want council buy-in on this before it goes further along at the Planning Commission. And if we need to change course on anything, I think that there's an opportunity for you to provide that sort of input.
Randy, in the past you've used an app that you've sent out for
Doodle.
The Doodle, yeah. Could you get with Nick and propose some dates? I'd like to see at least a half a dozen of them proposed, so that it's just. Or
do we just want to go with a planning commission meeting? Does that work?
Well, I have one of my thoughts would be
Mondays are challenging.
I think that having these meetings in sort of close range to where you hear something in a presentation and then a few days later you're actually discussing it would be potentially positive. I think if a whole month goes by in between these things, we may lose some momentum. So, and if Mondays are bad, that's fine. We could potentially do another night. But I was thinking the Planning Commission meetings are the 3rd Monday of a month. You guys have work study on the 3rd Tuesday of a month, and so potentially you could have back-to-back discussions. But if we wanted to do a Tuesday work study and then go into Wednesday, we could also do that.
Would we have time to get started on that next week at our study session? to get planning on this, or is
I
that
think
too
the
soon?
agenda is already
Is
pretty
it full?
full.
It's pretty full.
Yeah, what,
I would like a good 3 weeks to put together a thorough presentation, at least, and so maybe into March we could actually do a presentation that's advertised as a community meeting, and then follow that up with a workshop a few days later. So maybe looking at the March or even early April calendars would be appropriate. So I can work with Brandy to send out a doodle poll if that's the preferred way to pick a date.
Or a pair of dates.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we could be nice to do it back to back, but even if we were a week apart, even might be.
Yeah, I think as long as it's too much time doesn't go by, we'll be all right.
I agree, though. A month apart
It's too far.
you forget too much.
Spend the first half of the meeting playing catch up on what we heard the month before. I agree.
Okay, so it sounds like Brandy's gonna come up with some dates and get us some dates, and sooner versus later.
well, you know, yes, except it has to work within staff's, parameters that staff has already established. That's the problem. And to some degree, we have worked quite a bit towards the goal, which then the goal's 2016. So we just need to keep ever in our mind that, the clock's still moving forward, and we still have to be ready with the comp plan.
Sounded to me
in a
like Mr.
timely
Bond would be
manner.
ready
Right.
in 3 or 4 weeks.
Right,
so
it's got to
that's
be
with our
balanced
timeline.
between when we can do it and
Too.
so
Yeah.
we'll do the best we can at coming up with a date. So. Okay. All right, let's see. Go on with
Old item B.
old item B, approval of contract with TSI. Mr. Dorsey.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. As required for the City of Port Orchard's 2016 Periodic Comprehensive Plan Update, the city's transportation plan element of the comprehensive plan must be updated in 2015. Staff met with the city's current transportation system consultant, Transportation Solutions Incorporated, or TSI, in December of 2014 to develop the overall project scope and budget. TSI has subsequently provided a cost proposal of $92,000 for the city's Public Works Department. The Public Works Department has confirmed that pursuant to 3980 RCW, the professional services acquisition process was followed, and that the project proposal is funded within the city's street fund of the approved 2015 budget. I would like to note that the 2015 budget provided $80,000 for this activity. The additional $12,000 of funding includes additional work to update the transportation impact fee numbers will be managed within the street fund. Staff recommends that the City Council authorize the mayor to execute contract 02815 with TSI in an amount not to exceed $92,000 for the 2015 transportation element update to the comprehensive plan.
Okay, what's your pleasure? Yes, Mr. Thompson.
Motion. I move to authorize the mayor to execute contract number 028-15 with TSI in an amount not to exceed $92,000 for the 2015 transportation element update to the comprehensive plan.
We have a motion. Need a second.
Second.
Have a second. Open for discussion. Any questions?
Excited about spending $92,000, but it's necessary for a comprehensive plan, I believe.
Well, and then you just go flip a page and get another 60, and flip a page and get another 128, and you get less excited.
Yes, even less excited.
All right, any other comments, questions? Seeing none, we're going to be voting on a business item as marked in your agenda or your staff report 7C, approval of contract with Pace Engineering. All those in favor say aye.
Mr. Mayor, you're reading the wrong one.
Am I reading the wrong one?
We're not there yet. We wish we were there, but we're not there yet.
Okay,
We're
sorry.
still back at B.
7B.
Sorry, okay. Approval of contract with TSI, I'm sorry, for the 2015 transportation element of the comp plan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? That motion carries. Okay, now we'll move on to the contract with Pace Engineering, Mr. Dorsey.
Thank you. As required for the City of Port Orchard's 2016 Periodic Comprehensive Plan update, the city's comprehensive water system plan must be updated in 2015. Staff met with the city's current water system consultant, Pace Engineering, in December of 2014 to develop the overall project scope and budget. Pace Engineers has subsequently provided a cost proposal of $60,000 to the city's Public Works Department. The Public Works Department has confirmed again that pursuant to 3980 RCW, the professional services acquisition process was followed, and that the project proposal is funded within the city's water fund within the approved 2015 budget. Staff recommends that the City Council authorize the mayor to execute contract 02615 with Pace Engineers in an amount not to exceed $60,000 for the 2015 Comprehensive Water System Plan update.
Yes. Go ahead.
I move to authorize the mayor to execute contract number 026-15 with Pace Engineers, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $60,000 for the 2015 Comprehensive Water System Plan update.
I'll second.
Second. Is there discussion or questions? Seeing none, we'll be voting on the contract with Pace Engineering as read into the record. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That motion carries. Okay. Is this old item D? Does everybody agree? Mm-hmm. Approval of contract with BHC Consultants. Mr. Dorsey.
Thank you.
Tell us about this.
Again, as required for the City of Port Orchard's 2016 Periodic Comprehensive Plan update, the city's general sewer plan must also be updated in 2015. Staff met with the city's current sanitary sewer system consultant, BHC LLC, in December 2014 to develop the overall project scope and budget. BHC Consultants LLC has subsequently provided a cost proposal of $128,000 to the city's Public Works Department. The BHC scope also includes overdue GIS mapping and sanitary sewer system modeling. The Public Works Department has confirmed that pursuant to RCW 3980, the professional services acquisition process was followed and that the project proposal is funded within the city's sewer utility fund of the approved 2015 budget. Again, the 2015 budget provided $120,000 for this activity. The additional $8,000 of required funding will come from the overall management of the sewer utility fund. Staff recommends that the City Council authorize the mayor to execute contract 02715 with BHC Consultants LLC in an amount not to exceed $128,000 for the 2015 general sewer plan update.
Yes, Mr. Chang.
I move to authorize the mayor to execute contract number 02715 with BHC Consultants LLC in an amount not to exceed $128,000 for the 2015 general sewer plan update.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Open the floor to discussion. Yes.
How much are we paying to update the comp plan? I know when we hired the studio, the UW studio people, we spent 16, 18,000 on that, and then, but these numbers are actually part of it, aren't they?
Well, I think
to the city of updating that plan.
Well, these are elements to the comprehensive plan, and then they go into the comprehensive plan.
Well, and not exactly. The water system plan is a standalone document required by the Department of Health.
Right.
And so the water, and then you have to have water planning in your comprehensive plan as well. And so a fraction of what is being done under this contract is purely water system planning, and then other portions of it, the executive summary, certain exhibits are part of the comprehensive plan update process.
Is most of it part of the comp plan?
It's hard to say exactly where the line is, but the thing that's challenging is with the annexations, the boundaries of the city have changed so much that we have to plan for areas that we previously didn't plan for. And so in order to complete our comprehensive plan, we have to have a water system plan that goes out into all of these areas where we have annexed or where we're now planning for future growth that we weren't previously planning for. Right. And so a lot of this is a result of the annexations as well as just the need to update old documents.
Right, and it's also, you have to remember under the Growth Management Act, GMA required cities to have system plans to provide service, and so Nick's, right in that the main part of these plan updates, we're required, and I've mentioned all of last year that, the good news back in 2008 and 9, when I came here, we didn't have any plans. And the good news is we were able to get plans developed and adopted, but they weren't financially constrained. And so the whole purpose of these gap analysis and these updates to these plans is we're required by the state to not only have a water plan that's economically viable, a sewer plan, a transportation plan, a storm plan, but they have to be financially constrained. Mm-hmm. And we knew that 2015 was going to be a bitter pill to swallow to bring ourselves finally into compliance so that our system plans are in compliance and financially constrained so that Nick can then derive and pull portions of those plans into his overall comprehensive plan. So this is a paradigm shift year, and I think I've said that before. And unfortunately, that comes at cost.
So we don't actually know how much we're collectively spending to update the comp plan. Is that right?
If you'd like, Councilman Childs, I'll go back through the budget and give a budget report and try to capture those. Would you like 2015? Is that the year you'd like to look at?
Well, I just am curious, and I think the public would be curious as well, that when we're required to update the comp plan, that we have these elements and
right.
we have these different things that we have to do, but what's the overall figure that we're dealing with here?
I'll go back and go through the budget and do an analysis and get
because some of these are actually over and above the budget, aren't they?
No, they were in the budget.
But no, some of them are.
They're fractionals.
They're fractional over, but they're still within my ability to manage within the budget.
Okay. Anyway, I was just curious because it seems like it's. I mean, I was here in 2008, and I don't remember when we started working through the thing. I mean, when you came in and I would call it rescued us, and started working through all that, which is very much appreciated. I don't remember us spending these kind of dollars.
We had. Pertit did the transportation plan, Pace did the water plan, and BHC did the sewer plan. And they're all the same general numbers. The BHC numbers are larger this year because they'd never modeled the system for sewer, so we could say whether somebody is able to provide, or if we're able to provide sewer or not, where we do in our water system. And then the transportation plan has evolved now from just the transportation plan and the updated capital plan to also include this transportation impact fee discussion. So it's a very large body of work, and it's required by the state.
Thanks.
Unfortunately. I mean, I'd rather build a pump station or put in...
Fix roads and do all kinds
fix
of stuff.
roads, but it's a requirement.
Okay, other questions? All right, we're going to be vote on the contract with BHC Consultants as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you, that motion carries. Okay, approval of contract KPF Consulting Engineers. Mr. Dorsey.
Thank you. KPFF Consulting Engineers, they're the City of Port Orchard's FHWA required bridge program manager for the Lund Avenue Bridge, structure ID 084-77200, which was annexed in the city in 2012. In 2013, a bridge program was developed by KPFF for the city. Having accomplished required inspections, monitoring, maintenance, reporting, and overall bridge management in compliance with the FHWA National Bridge Program criteria in 2014, which included the underbridge inspection, that's the costly U-bit inspection, continued routine inspections, monitoring, repairs, and program management will continue into 2015. Staff recommends that the City Council authorize the Mayor to execute contract number 01915 with KPFF Consulting Engineers in an amount not to exceed $13,037 for the 2015 Lund Avenue Bridge Program Management.
Yes, please.
I move to authorize the mayor to execute contract number 019-15 with KPFF Consulting Engineers in an amount not to exceed $13,037 for the 2015 Lund Avenue Bridge Program Management.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Open the floor for discussions or comments. All right, seeing none.
Oh, just
Yes.
Just a second. I wanted to ask the council if we wanted to discuss the memorandum that Carol Morse, our interim city attorney, provided us regarding the indemnification language that KPFF is requiring, or if Carol cared to make any comments on that.
Well, everything I'd like to say is in the memo. Just to let you know that you have a form that we've been using. They asked to deviate from it, and so I tried to show you in the memo exactly what changes they wanted and the recommendation from the insurance pool in the form booklet that I used.
Right, and I guess my counterpoint is that there are relatively few consulting firms that provide this bridge management, FHWA type of bridge management. They had problem with the indemnification language. I'm stuck in the middle where I'm required to have this under contract, but not having this indemnification language. So if I were to look at the lesser of two evils, knowing that we've never had issues with our contracts or with KPFF, I'm supporting their language request, because I need to get this management moving, and otherwise we're in non-compliance with FHWA.
And AWC is our insurer, correct? And where have they?
I thought when we checked.
I have provided our insurer the language that KPFF is wanting to use, and they advised against that. And is recommending to go forward the interim attorney's recommendation. However, they did say that the language is does protect us on some aspects of it, and the proposed language that KPFF is presenting is consistent with the Washington State Department of Transportation's language. So it's going to protect the city in some parts.
So what they're proposing is what DOT uses.
Correct.
Right.
KPFF is proposing, yes, what WashDOT uses.
If I may, it's best and better, or one, I mean.
And then the other thing is, if there is any contract issues, AWC may not defend us on that. It would all go to our legal counsel to defend, which is part of our general budget.
Oh, that's crap.
That's the proverbial rock in a hard place.
Mm-hmm. Carol, should I recuse myself or make an announcement that I'm a DOT employee? This doesn't have anything to do with the DOT except the language or the standards they've mentioned.
Right. All we're doing is just comparing it to the fact that DOT has a form contract, and this language is consistent with their form contract.
I really want to move ahead with this like Mark says, but I feel compelled to say that I don't want to go against our insurer. I'm not looking for problems.
Yeah, I'm with you, but on the other hand, though, too, they aren't going to insure us for this anyway, are they?
It's hard to say. It'd be a case by case, but I just have to make you guys aware that if there is a contract concern, there may be a possibility that AWC would not defend us in the contract. It would go to our legal counsel.
Yeah.
The insurance pool won't tell you before a claim is actually filed whether or not they'll defend you.
Yeah.
You actually have to present them with a claim, and then they'll tell you based on the facts whether or not they'll defend you. And I'm not pointing out here that there's a huge defect. I'm just trying to point out to you that it's different from your form contract.
So what we have to do then is weigh our risk.
Right.
And I can tell you from the risk management part of it, of the claims received on behalf of the city, we haven't had any contracts that we've had to ask our insurer or attorney to defend us in, since I've been here the last 8 years.
This is only, what, a $13,000 contract? I think it's minimal risk.
Yeah, I prefer our standard language, but if this is language DOT and other agencies within the state are using, I tend to agree with Mr. Cartwright. It's not a huge contract.
I could see where they're going to want DOT, FHWA, and it's their pool that they play in for bridge inspections. So I agree with Jerry that I wouldn't normally go against AWC's advice, but I think in this case the risk is minimal.
And my plan for next year, this kind of caught up, because they signed our contract last year and the year before. So it was a bit of a shock when suddenly the president of the firm said, oh, I want this language changed, or whoever looked at it. My plan is to, in next year, go back out to RFQ and just tell them that, you know, next year we're going to be using our indemnification language, and if you're not interested, then I'll go out at the end of this year. But for 2015, it's, like I said, this wasn't anticipated because they'd signed up previous contracts. So it'll be a 1 year only.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we're going to be voting to approve contract with KPFF Consulting Engineers. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Records show there's one in opposition. The motion passes. And just to comment then, what I'm hearing and Mark's saying is that we're going to try to align all our contracts to meet the disclaimer. And you know, all of them in the future will eventually we'll get to, they'll all be the same. They'll all have the same.
Well, I want you to know that sometimes people do ask for changes to the contract, and if they're, you know, minor and they're not pointed at the indemnification or insurance provisions, you know, that's something that we do, you know, administratively.
Case by
Right.
case.
Yeah, but with indemnification and insurance, then we'll come to you.
Right. Okay. All right. Thanks. All right. We're moving on then to F, approval of egress/ingress utility easement. Mr. Dorsey, you get a lot of action tonight.
I do. The City of Port Orchard owns, via annexation, the property associated with the McCormick Meadows Storm Drainage Facility, or tax parcel 052301-2-012-2005. The adjacent properties to the south, owned by Vernon and Cassandra Pontius, tax parcels 052301-3031-2000 and 052301-3032-2009, are landlocked and have requested legal access across the same 60-foot area that an existing ingress, egress, and utility easement occupies for the benefit of the neighboring properties to the west and north. The valuable consideration for granting the easement is the Pontius required participation within the amended joint use and maintenance agreement that the neighboring properties to the west and north are party to. Staff recommends that the City Council authorize the Mayor to execute an agreement with Vernon and Cassandra Pontius for an ingress, egress, and utility easement across the south 60 feet of Lot 8, being tax parcel 052301-2-012-2005.
Okay, Council, what's your...
Mr. Mayor, I move to authorize the mayor to execute an agreement with Vernon and Cassandra Pontius for ingress, egress, and utility easement across the south 60 foot of Lot 8, tax parcel number 052301-2-012-2005.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Open the floor for discussion and comments, Mr.
Mr. Dorsey, so the parcel to the west already has an easement across the southerly portion. This is just granting them access down that same easement farther down? Is that?
Now, are visualized 20 parcels in a long rectangular, 2 rows of 10.
Okay.
The city, through the McCormick Meadows development, picked up the very last parcel in the, like, parcel 10 before you go to 11 and start going back up. So you go down. So we're the very southeast parcel, and there was an existing easement across that parcel for those 20 lots. We were parcel 10 or lot 8 out of those. I guess there were 16 total. And so there's an easement. For some reason, the county, when they subdivided those properties to the south of that 16 lot subdivision that had an easement across our lot and then going north-south, they allowed those to be subdivided without any sort of access, legal access. So all we're doing at this point is allowing this landlocked property to go out onto Lone Bear and then to Figley through, yeah, that shows it better, through the easement that everybody else goes through. I don't know why the county would approve a subdivision and allow it to be landlocked, but when I contacted them, they said it's not their problem.
Utility access?
The,
or is this cars, everything?
It's ingress, egress, and utilities. It's just a standard ingress, egress, and utility easement, so I'm sure power and phone, cable go down there. There's no City of Bremerton, I don't know if they have water in that area or if these people are on individual wells.
Mark, didn't this come up in public property, and this was the outcome we were hoping would happen, that the
yes,
the other property owners would allow the Pontius property owners to join in on the portion of that maintenance easement?
We started with public properties, and the initial thought or the initial impetus was to do two things. One is the City of Port Orchard isn't a member of the road maintenance agreement. The McCormick, when they owned it and they were part of that original subdivision, they exempted themselves out of that road maintenance agreement. And so there were two issues. We were initially going to update the road maintenance agreement when the city attorney looked at that document and saw some flaws in that document, looking at correcting that document and providing the easement. And then it got convoluted to the point to where it was much easier for the city to take their position where they were before, which is not be party to the road maintenance agreement, but just provide the easement if the Pontiuses were to join with those other lots so that they have a financial consideration in the maintenance of that road. So this is, after a lot of research and conversations, this is the final outcome and solution of this. Now, there are properties further to the south that are potentially landlocked, and so, but they would have to go through Pontius to get to this easement. So,
or come up from Ord Clifton, I think was the other.
Well, I don't think they can get to Clifton. There are some landlocked properties in there, and unfortunately, I wasn't going to sponsor correcting a regional error. I'm just dealing with what was before us. So this may come back to us in the future. Somebody else, if they can get to Lone Bear, the private Lone Bear, then we may be providing another easement, but at least we'll have a template in place now.
Are we taking up maintenance of the road, or is this a toll road, or is it a private road? Or
no, this is the public right-of-way ends at the east line of this easement. So the city maintains right down to, off of Figley. That was a public road that was built as part of McCormick Meadows. So that part of Lone Bear Lane has been constructed to a city standard, and it's public. As soon as you start down the steep hill, where we just have a regional stormwater facility there, it's just a gravel road that goes down and it turns north. The city cuts the vegetation back on that so that we can get access to our pond. But as far as grading and gravel or things of that nature, again, we're not party to that agreement. That's up to these residences and now the Pontiuses to contribute into a fund, a reserve maintenance fund that they use to maintain that road. So it's a revenue neutral issue for us.
Thank you. Any other questions? We're going to be voting on business item egress and ingress utility easement agreement with Mr. and Mrs. Vernon Pontius. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That motion carries. Thank you. Okay, approval of change order number 3. Mr. Dorsey.
Last one, I promise. On May 13th, 2014, the Port Orchard City Council approved contract 05114 with Parametrics for the 2014 Bethel Avenue Grindout HMA Design and Bid Construction Administration Services. Change orders number 1 and 2 were issued in late 2014 to add contract time only for project continuity into 2015. Tonight's change order number 3 provides required funding for the 2015 Bid Construction Administration Support Carryover and pending addendum number 1 for the design and specification development needed for the replacement of 4 existing curb ramps that are required to be replaced pursuant to the Rehabilitation Act, which was recently determined by staff at a WashDOT pedestrian accommodation workshop. Staff recommends that the City Council authorize the mayor to execute change order number 3 to contract 051-14 with Parametrics Engineering in an amount not to exceed $16,570.22 for the Bethel Avenue Grindout Bid Construction Administration and Addendum 1. I would like to point out the fiscal impact. The total amount of funding needed for the 2015 construction admin and pending Addendum 1 is $24,580. Contract 051-14 had $8,009.78 of unspent funding in 2014. So change order number 3 to the current contract is the difference of $16,570.22. The total amount of $24,580 needed for this activity will come from the Bethel intersection repair line items of the 2015 budget.
Mr. Patonson.
I move to authorize the mayor to execute change order number 3 to contract number 051-14 with Parametrics Engineering an amount not to exceed $16,570.22 for the 2015 Bethel Avenue Grindout Bid Construction Administration and Addendum number 1.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Open floor for discussion or comments. Yes, Mr. Patonsu.
How soon are we going out to bid?
I think this Friday. So we'll go out to bid with what we have designed, and with this contract approval, we can then go out and do a design to bring the 4 corner intersections up to current standard, as I think I mentioned at the last council meeting, that I went to that 2-day workshop and realized that if you improve a crosswalk and you don't bring the curb ramps up to code, that basically is discrimination. Under
we basically have to do it.
So we've had to add that scope into the project. So that'll be addendum 1. So we'll issue addendum 1, get the bids in, and then start with, at this point, Schedule C, which is the Bethel Lund Grindout repair and overlay, complete overlay with the new curb ramp. So that'll just be done. And then in 2016 and 17, we'll look at doing just the grind out and repairs to the north, and we'll do the grind out and repairs to the south in 17. And in one of those, 2016 or 2017, we'll look at the redesign of the entire Bethel corridor, and then look at the bigger transportation funding picture for those future improvements.
If my dreams come true and we get a wonderful bid, I know, as Mr. Whittleton spoke to, our current area starts about Valere, I believe, and it runs to the Mitchell.
Right. Schedule C basically will take care of Bethel from Taco Time to Mitchell. It'll take care of Lund.
So let's say we got a great bid. I know we need to stay away from the traffic loops at the Walmart traffic light, but there's a section from Radio Shack to Valere going on the northbound side that is horrible.
Right.
If we could get an extra 50, 60 feet, is it possible, hopefully, to get back a little farther?
Well, how we're bidding this is how we bid that other paving work 2 years ago. We've broken this. We're going to bid the entire project, the full I think the engineer's estimate was about 1.7 million.
Okay.
We're bidding the full project in schedules A, B, C, D, and E. Depending on, and I just found out that oil prices have dropped, asphalt prices have dropped considerably. If we can get the bids, there's a potential that we could do Schedule C and maybe B. But remember, the Schedule C is the only schedule that we're doing a full overlay once we do all the grind outs. So we'll do the grind outs and the subgrade repairs and then do an overlay in that area. And then the other ones are just, as you see, like in state highways, where they're just, we're getting a 20-year road until we know what we're doing and can afford to do the bigger project.
So that was glass more than half full, but I also sit on the transit board where there's a major project that we got the benefit of great asphalt prices, but then the contractors are all busier now and there's less of them that survived the economic downturn. So we got a bid that exceeded the engineer's estimates. So I'm hopeful we come out smelling like a rose here, and can do more than we've anticipated.
Right, and we are, this week, I mean, we were delayed because of rain. We were going to schedule it for last week, but we do have our hot box mounted, and we're going to get, we've been fixing potholes with cold mix, but we've identified, we did all the paving repairs. We stayed away from Bethel because that was a different project, but we did all the citywide for $200,000 last year.
Yourself?
The stuff that we did last year, we're going to put a hot box and get some hot mix to go down Bethel, go into the waterfront lots, based on comments we received. So, it's a Band-Aid, but it's, the best we can do given the big picture.
All right, any other comments? We're on business item 7G, the old number 7G, contract number 05114 with Parametrics. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. That motion carries. Okay, notice of intent to petition for Harrison Salmonberry annexation. Mr. Bond.
Yes, thank you. A notice of intent to petition for annexation was received on December 19th, 2014 to annex 41 parcels totaling approximately 22 acres. The parcels are located in the vicinity of Southeast Salmonberry Road and Harris Road Southeast in Kitsap County. The parcels are in the city's currently recognized urban growth area. The parcels have a county comprehensive plan designation of urban low-density residential and a zoning of UL. As stated in the notice of intention, the applicants have requested R8 zoning for the proposed area for annexation. After receipt of the notice of intent, RCW 35.13.125 requires the council to set a date not later than 60 days after the filing of the request for a meeting in order to determine whether it will accept, reject, or geographically modify the proposed annexation, whether it will assume or whether it will require the simultaneous adoption of a comprehensive plan, and whether it will require the assumption of all or of any portion of city indebtedness by the area to be annexed. The decision to whether to accept the proposed annexation is entirely within the council's discretion, and there is no appeal from the decision. By accepting a notice of intent to annex, the council is not committing itself to annex if and when a sufficient petition is presented to it. The decision to accept merely allows the annexation to go forward procedurally and allows a petition to be circulated. If the city requires the assumption of all or any portion of city indebtedness and or the adoption of the comprehensive plan, it shall record this action in its minutes, and any resulting petition must be drawn to clearly indicate this fact per RCW 35.13.125. Staff recommends that council allow a petition to be circulated for annexation of the property described in the notice of intention and require the simultaneous adoption of a comprehensive plan and zoning designations and the assumption of existing city indebtedness by the area to be annexed. And also, I wanted to note, under financial impact in my report, I wrote none. What I meant to say was that none has been provided at this time. If and when a petition that has the sufficient signatures is received, we'll do a full fiscal analysis for you at that time when you consider whether to annex or not to annex.
Okay. What's your pleasure, Mr. Patonsu?
I'm going to make a motion just to get debate going here. I have some concerns here, but I'm going to make this motion anyway. Move to allow the applicant to circulate a petition for annexation of property described in the notice of intent and to require the simultaneous adoption of comprehensive plan and zoning designation and the assumption of existing city indebtedness by the area to be annexed.
I'll second.
And we have a second. Open the floor for comments or discussion. Mr. Patonsu.
I have a number of concerns with the petition as presented. If you look at the map up there, there's this, I drove out here today, there's Fay Court is one of my first concerns. And if we, Fay Court, and you'll see it.
Oh, Fay Courts.
Yes, Brandy's pointing at it. If we accepted this annexation as presented to us, you couldn't get to Fay Court, which would be a county road, without driving through the city roads. So I think we've got a bit of an illogical boundary here. I think one of the things that I would need to see to support this is the easterly boundary be carried straight forward to Salmonberry and then close that whole area so that those are all, would all be then city roads instead of county city and jump, you know, it'd be unfair to those citizens that live there to get their street sweep, their snow plow to come through because the county probably just wouldn't do it.
This is one of the things the county complained about when we were having those discussions.
Illogical boundaries. So I think that's one of my concerns. My other major concern is I drove out there today and that section of Salmonberry is in horrible condition. I would think the only way we want to accept this is if we exclude Salmonberry Road from our annexation, or we negotiate with the county to bring it up to standard and we'll take it over. We can't afford to fix that road, and it's just as bad as Bethel in that section right there. I don't know if it's purposeful by the county to not fix any roads in our urban growth area. I hope not, but that road's in bad shape. And it would be unfair to our citizens to have to fix that section of road. So those are my two biggest concerns.
Thank you.
I just had a general observation, and it's not specifically to this annexation, and it's actually, what's the phrase? The cat's out of the bag. But I've noticed that in other areas like California, there are 2 votes for annexation. You have your new area that wants to be annexed, and then you have a vote of the existing area, and then hopefully you get some sort of harmony between the 2 votes before you join the 2 together. That's not something we've done, but I think it might be something we'd consider for the future. It's probably too late for this one.
If you're asking the question, I assume you're talking about like an advisory vote from the existing citizens of Port Orchard. I don't know if that's something we can do or not.
In the state law, there's only the petition and the election method. There isn't a procedure for advisory votes, so.
The advisory vote would probably not be binding, but it might be an interesting barometer of sentiment. I know they don't seem to do that anywhere here. I know that Lakewood's done a lot of annexations, and it's not.
You're talking about a general question about annexations in general,
just sort of
not
a philosophical.
Specific. Okay. No,
I guess I wanted to share a little bit of my philosophical view on annexation, and I think really established residential areas are probably going to be 3rd out of 3 on my priority list of why we should annex. And I think commercial opportunities is going to be number 1 in my viewpoint. Vacant land that can be turned into commercial opportunities would be 3, and established neighborhoods where there's not much return on investment would be the 3rd of the 3. But this motion tonight isn't to thumb up, thumb down, or change a geographical boundary at this point in time. It's merely to allow the petitioners an opportunity to gather signatures to see if that particular area has enough property owners that want to be considered for annexation. And I'm going to hold going to reserve judgment on a final vote until, assuming that they're going to gather the signatures until we can see the economic impact of potentially including all of that. I would like, and I know that this is requesting a lot on staff, I think Rob raises a very good point on landlocking a county road from the city road. And I don't know if that being raised tonight is going to change the thought process on the current petition that we have in front of us, or if there's a way to contact the petitioner to see if that changes their viewpoint of what they want to submit.
The question is, can we amend the
I believe we can
application?
geographically modify this. That's one of the actions we can take.
We could do that tonight, or I mean, I guess we could. That is one of the 3 actions we could take. I was just going to say to cost it out both ways, but if we want it to be all included, then we should probably cost it out, assuming what would be the worst case scenario for
I think
road
that's
repair.
the next step if they got all the petitions. But I think at this point, we could modify this to logical, what we as a group decided was a logical boundary, and then it would be up to the petitioners to gather enough signatures in that new geographic area, I believe. Would that be
Do
correct?
we have the right to modify or to change this?
Well, according to state law, what you're doing tonight is you're setting a date not later than 60 days after the filing of their request for a meeting with the initiating parties to determine whether the city will accept, reject, or geographically modify the proposed annexation, whether it shall require simultaneous adoption of the comprehensive plan, blah, blah, blah. So tonight, you're just setting the date.
Okay, so we would then accept or deny this, and if we accepted it, we're setting a date, and at that future date, we could modify the boundary, is that what I'm hearing?
No, you don't accept or deny it tonight, you're setting a date tonight.
Okay, I must have misstated that in my memo, because my understanding was that we were accepting this for circulation, so my apologies on that.
Okay, so I need to know what we're doing.
Yeah, I do.
Can you also verify the dates that we're talking about? I think there's a typo on the certification of notice of intent. It sets a date in 2012. I think that was meant to be 2014. But are we counting 60 days from December 19th or from January 6th?
Or from tonight.
Well, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow this doesn't feel the same as we've done in the past.
Doesn't. I'm not the attorney.
Yeah, I'm not the attorney. I'm almost so. I would say that one thing, just to kibitz with the rest of you guys, if we straighten that easterly line in order to not landlock it, doesn't that mean we're taking in even more of Salmonberry?
Potentially.
No, it's...
Isn't it this here?
Well, the current proposal doesn't take Salmonberry at all.
Taking in, now we're going to do this.
But I don't think the Boundary Review Board is going to accept.
That was my question. Can you, because part of the property that would be annexed abuts Salmonberry, do we have to take half of Salmonberry?
No, the county doesn't take half roads. Typically, the county and the Boundary Review Board, if you look at annexations in the city, have always taken, put the main road that serves the area into the annexed area so that you have a continuous service for road sweeping, snow plowing, etc. So I would be surprised if the Boundary Review Board accepted this annexation without including Salmonberry.
So we would be taking twice as much Salmonberry.
Be a deal. Well, the petition, though, is not to include it. We can ask.
So I don't
But
think
we
you
already
have-
own Salmonberry right up to the annexation point.
We do.
So what's the likelihood the county's going to say, drop it down 30 feet and we'll keep Salmonberry? It's not likely they're going to take it. But we're outguessing something we don't need to outguess at this point.
The other thing I was thinking, if I was the petitioner, I don't know if the petitioner's out here or not, but if I was the petitioner and I heard some of these negative comments that we're making about it, I mean, fair comments, but still a negative on the problems that it might, the city might incur, I would be a little reluctant to go down the road too far and spend a lot of time going door to door and getting these petitions signed when I didn't think it was going to happen anyway. So I don't know what the thinking is out there, but I don't know if I'd want to do that.
Mr. Morris?
Councilor, did you?
What legal obligation, I mean, if it's in our urban growth area, and the citizens of that urban growth area, and it's contiguous to our city, what legal obligation? I mean, I think the intent of the Growth Management Act is
to annex.
For them to annex to our city. Now, I have concerns on how this happens, but do we have legal obligation?
Well, you have a legal obligation to set the date and then have the meeting, but at that meeting, you can deny the petition, and there's no appeal from that. And there's nothing in the Growth Management Act that says that you must annex every time an annexation petition comes before you. And Brandy just gave me some dates, so these are the dates that are 60 days after the date the petition was filed?
Those are just the next 3 council meeting dates.
Oh, okay.
So when was the petition filed?
January 19th.
December 19th or January 6th?
That was the 19th they brought it in.
We can't get there. You can't get there.
Deny, reject, or modify.
Yeah. February 24th is our next council meeting.
But who's the meeting with?
I don't know. Looks like we're taking on some work.
I have a point of order question while we're doing that. I don't think we have a motion to set the date. I think we have a motion
You're
to
absolutely. I
set
withdraw
the
my motion.
circuit.
We have a motion, basically,
I
a
withdrew
motion
my
for
motion. I'm
consideration
withdrawing
is
my
here.
motion.
and
So we could rephrase a motion of,
After we know what it is we're.
thank you.
And if it.
Also, we've withdrawn.
Set the date.
Rather than withdraw the motion, that everybody moves forward with the motion, and if it fails, then you move forward with the secondary motion, so that way it's a little bit cleaner.
So we
for the
want to go
minutes.
ahead. We have a motion and a second to circulate a petition for annexation.
So the recommendation is we vote against our motion? If we,
Yeah,
Well, I
let's
guess
just do it,
in the
get it
past, I mean, that's how I understand it, but
Plain and
you
be
can,
fast.
if the
Let's do
motion
it.
maker and the seconder, I guess, agrees to withdraw, we'll note that in the minutes, and then you can restate a motion for future discussion.
Right, it's easy. Let's just do it.
I would like to withdraw my motion because the
Okay.
staff report is incorrect.
Both
That's different.
the motion maker and the second withdrew the original motion, so now we have no motion on the floor.
Who second? Yes, you did.
I think I did, and I would withdraw
What's the
my
motion?
second.
What was the motion?
I said, I believe I seconded the motion.
I read the motion
I
right
think-
directly from the staff report.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, I got that. So
We
before,
we haven't heard back from the attorney yet. What
What kind of verbiage should we be
are we doing
including
here?
in our motion now?
You should be setting the date for a meeting with the initiating parties to determine whether you are going to accept, reject, or geographically modify the proposed annexation, whether you will require simultaneous adoption of the comprehensive plan, if such plan has been prepared and filed for the area to be annexed, and whether you shall require the assumption of all or any portion of the existing city indebtedness by the area to be annexed.
Did that date need to be 60 days from the application?
Right, but you could, the 24th.
it's the first council meeting 60 days after the filing of the petition.
Okay, so the meeting is with the council. It's not with staff.
Right, it is with the council. Council makes the decision.
So I guess I'll move to set a meeting date for February 24th with the petitioner to accept or
modify,
to
discuss?
Determine if we'll accept.
Accept.
Accept, reject, or modify.
Aye.
That'd be 60 days.
Okay, then I will second that again.
We have a motion and a second now. Discussion.
I just thought it had to be 60 days. You said a meeting date in 60 days, right? February 24th
Or do we
is in
have to
60
set it within
days.
60 days?
Did it say 60 days after?
The filing of the petition.
Right.
No later than 60 days after the filing of this request.
Is it no later?
Yeah.
Well,
Then that would be tonight.
But what we have to do tonight is we have to just set
Joel, who's
another
on
date.
first?
What?
Tonight is in the 60 days, and we have to set a date.
I believe that is correct. We needed to take action within 60 days
The
of the
action I
application.
think we need to take is we
can do
need
it
to
the
set a
24th.
date.
But we cannot. We need to do it tonight.
We have to do that setting tonight, which is in the 60 days, but that date does not have to be in 60 days.
Has to be within 60 days.
No, the setting of the date has to be in 60
No.
days.
I have to do it. Oh, crap.
Yeah, that's what it says. Set the date not later than 60 days.
This gets more
Set
confusing.
a date
than
not
minute.
later than. Okay. So, yeah, tonight. So,
Set the date.
There it is, right
We
there.
have to set a date no later than 60 days after the application date, which is December 19th. If we need to take action on this tonight, because
There's holidays.
Okay.
which what we're trying to do, because if it will be more than 60 days after the petition date
So maybe
on the
the original
24th.
wording was okay.
Christmas, New Year's, there was holidays.
I think what you would do
Depending
is
whether
you'd
to
set the date
let-
first.
allow 'em to circulate
But
the
since you
petition.
haven't set the date first, why don't you take action tonight?
So
To set the date.
Set what date?
we didn't do this properly, is what happened. We should have.
This is beginning to look like the original wording is fine. What it looks like to me. So it's,
Can I
we're acting on
back,
it within.
but actually, the only way I'm going to make a motion is if I can, one more time, try to make a motion. The only way I'm willing to do that is if I'm going to geographically modify this.
In what way?
We don't have to determine that, though. We just have to set a date. and
But
then
no,
we
it
can
said that
determine.
we could modify.
It says we can.
It said we could modify.
When they bring the
Well, we
petition
didn't
in?
do our homework here.
I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. I'd like to interject, actually, what the petitioner wrote, which I think is correct because I read it in two places. He states, or the petitioner states, "It is requested that the City Council of the City of Port Orchard set a date not later than 60 days after the filing of this request for a meeting with the undersigned to determine one of the three options." I believe all we have to do tonight is set the date
But we have to do it within 60
so
days.
that we can decide one of the three options at a
Which is only
future
9
point
days
in
from now.
time.
Okay.
And
What
the
I
date
heard-
that
what
you
I
said-
heard the attorney read, though, was that we had to set the date within 60 days of the application.
correct.
Right, so
That's
by-
what
by the
Tonight, we
19th of
set the
this month.
date, we meet the first obligation. The next time we meet with the petitioners, we will have one of the three options to
So the
decide.
current motion on the floor,
There is no current motion.
yes, it
I
was.
thought you withdrew it.
No, I didn't.
I have a solution here.
Okay.
Yes, the current motion.
Hang on just a minute. Let's hear Mr. Bond's solution.
And Alan has the assist on this one, but we could actually take this action at work study if we need to, because work study is still within 60 days of the initial date of receiving the petition. And so I think what I would recommend doing is putting it on the work study agenda as an action item, and we take action at that meeting next week.
What?
The motion then would be to
motion on the
No,
floor
you s-
is correct. They can set a date, which he's already set a date, and it doesn't have to, the date can be any time. The date can be 6 months. The date, they don't limit to when the council has to set the date, other than they have to have a date within the first 60 days. So today is the 60 days, is the last meeting, well, excuse me, the work study session is the last meeting. You guys have the opportunity to set a date. That's all you're doing, is setting a date, either today
Why didn't we
or
just
next
set
month.
the date right now, if that's all we're doing?
Correct, you can.
I believe that's
So
what
the
your
current
last motion
motion
was,
is
to set
correct.
the date.
It was, but then I heard contrary information.
So, can I throw something out? We already heard that next week's study session is pretty full. So I would propose the following work study session, so we can get all this stuff, boundary, and give Nick an opportunity
Can't.
to look at some things,
It
so
has
we
to be
can
within
discuss
60
it.
days.
Discuss it in a work study session with the participants. And since we're setting the date, we're legal to go another month, 5 weeks, whatever it is, until the next work study session.
But you could just go to the 24th. It doesn't have to be a work study. You can just go to a regular
Which that's the
meeting.
current motion on the floor.
Motion on the floor that
we go have the date set to the.
You're confused, Mr. Childs,
This
as
is why
was
I like
I.
to abstain.
So now what we're hearing is that we only have to set the date for the next meeting within 60 days.
The meeting itself can be outside the 60 days.
That's what we're hearing now.
I'm not totally sure that's right.
and
I
that's
think
what it says
I
there.
think we have to set a date to meet with them within 60 days to make that decision. So the decision has to be made within 60 days. The next work study meeting is within 60 days. And what the attorney had just mentioned to me is that you could potentially open it at the study session and then continue it to the next meeting and take care of it then.
Work study. Let's do it then.
Okay, so we'll open the discussion. I like that idea. And continue it. But that's for a future meeting.
How do we get out of here?
And
That's
that
the
would
question.
be-
We need a motion to set a date to meet with the initiating parties for February 17th to, and the language is there concerning adoption of the comp plan and indebtedness.
You took the words right out of my mouth. So we're setting a meeting on our next work study, February
17th.
February 17th to do exactly what Nick said.
Second. Oh, you second.
You can be my guest.
Well, maybe I don't want to. Second, that's fine. Second, so, great.
We had he's right. I heard a comment from the gallery that there was a previous motion to do it on the 24th.
So let's vote it down.
I thought you guys withdrew that.
You withdraw that again and change the 24th to the 17th.
Did we withdraw? I'm confused.
You withdrew it, and the second.
No, that was the first motion.
That was the first time.
You need to withdraw the
First
24th
motion's
motion.
gone. The first motion's gone. The second motion is still on the floor.
And it's irrelevant because we're going
The second motion was to do this on the 24th. We need to resolve that.
Right.
Everybody's putting this on YouTube.
That's right. Are you going
Okay.
to withdraw that?
No, let's just go ahead and vote.
Yes,
Our conscience
I
on this motion on the floor is to set the date at the for the 24th.
However, the 24th is outside the 60 days.
We're aware of that.
You're right.
Just vote it down?
All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay.
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 That motion fails. Now we have no motion on the
Else
floor.
can make a motion if they'd like.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I'll take
Mr.
a stab
Cartwright.
at it.
Okay.
I move to set the petitioners' meeting with council for the next work study session, which will be on February 17th.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or questions?
Please, no.
All right. I see no questions. All those in favor of setting the date of February 17th for the meeting with the petitioners, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Thank you. We will meet the petitioners then and complete the process. All right. The last item on our agenda, unless
J and K?
let's see.
We have an item I.
Yes, that's item I, and that's ad hoc committee, Mr. Cartwright.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I asked this item to be put on the agenda. A week ago, last Friday, was the closing date for interested parties or firms to submit their interest in becoming the next city attorney for Port Orchard. I picked up my package Wednesday night. Deb had placed it in my box here. Opened it up Thursday morning, briefly scanned through the packages to see if just names or whatnot. And I noticed that Ron Templeton is one of the applicants. Ron Templeton is Kitsap Transit's attorney. I work at Kitsap Transit in upper management. I think for the sake of transparency and fairness and neutrality, that I withdraw and not score the initial applicants. So I'm asking that another council member pick up this endeavor at this point in time. I do have the packets with me. As I said, I haven't reviewed them. I haven't scored them. All the materials are completely raw as they were Thursday morning last week. I believe Rob would have the same potential transparency issue as would John Clausen. Cindy and Beck are already reviewed the applications, and so I'm going to ask whether Fred or Jerry are interested in supplying some time to do the scoring.
I'd like to, but I can't make the Friday deadline.
Friday.
No, the first blush at this is just scoring them. Taking it home and
just
scoring
the 10 applications that we've received.
By this Friday.
By this Friday.
Yeah, I can't do it.
Can't do it.
You?
Yeah, I can do it.
Thank you, Jerry. I'm going to make a motion because the last time I believe that this had been discussed for a councilmatic decision was that the motion was for myself and Cindy and Beck to do the scoring. So I'm going to move at this point in time that I remove myself and Jerry Childs replaces me for the ad hoc committee for the selection of the city attorney, at least through this phase. If we get through another phase, Jerry, and you want to change something, we can open discuss it at that point in time.
Okay. I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of this change of names, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yes, thank you. Okay, report of the council committees. Mr. Clausen isn't here. Does anybody have a report for the
We haven't had a
finance?
meeting.
We haven't had a meeting, and we need to schedule one. I know Mr. Martin sent an email out today, and we need Mr. Clausen to get back and for us to compare calendars. So
We'll have
there's
to do
nothing
it
to report.
do it online.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was noticing that too.
Okay, economic development, Ms. Ashby.
Yes, we met yesterday morning at 10 o'clock here in council chambers. We started our meeting with a preliminary discussion on the summer foot ferry service. Brandy provided us with a recap of the 2014 ridership, and Larry Stokes from the Port of Bremerton joined us. And it was just a preliminary discussion, and we took our data, and we'll be back at our next meeting and work further on summer foot ferry service. We had a discussion on the special events ordinance by Ms. Reinerson. We are updating our public event process ordinance, and we discussed it at length. There were revisions necessary, and Brandy's going to bring that back at our next meeting. We also had a discussion on the Tremont Overlay District and possible interim regulations. Mr. Bond, our planning department, had some interest in developments going along there, and in looking over our ordinance, he found inconsistencies with the ordinance and the comp plan, and we need to do some revision in that ordinance. And so he will be working on that, and we realize that it may be take some time to complete that process. We also had a brief discussion on updating the sign code and just introduced making some changes to our fee schedule, and that was something that was coming through finance also. And that was basically what we talked about yesterday morning.
Okay, thank you. Utility and Sewer Advisory, Mr. Patonsu.
Sure. Neither of those have met since our last meeting. Utilities meets this Friday. 13th, Friday the 13th, oh boy. And Sewer Advisory is next Wednesday evening.
Okay, thank you. Public Property, Mr. Cartwright.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We met yesterday at 8:30 here in Chambers. We had two items on the agenda. The first one was a software presentation called Mind Mixer that Nick brought forward, and we had a telephonic conversation with the vendor. What it does is it allows entities to go out and use Facebook and other social media or direct email to gather comments and input from citizens. I was very impressed with it. We'll be seeing more on that later, but basically it's about a $2,000 a year subscription for this service and about 45 minutes estimated of staff time per week to manage it. And I think it might be a very good tool on obtaining citizen comments in a number of forums. Might even help with the comp stuff, parks, whatever. So I was pretty happy with that. I think as reported before, we had another discussion on the $64,000 potential fix to the active club. So we did invite members of the Pee-wee, the President Pee-wee and the President Little League to come and sit with us. And they are going to go out to their 4,100 members, I believe, to see if they can gather enough support within their own organization to make the necessary changes, fixes to the building so that they continue to use it and not have the flooding or the infestation issues. So we'll be hearing back from from those groups on that, and they were happy to report that. I guess there were some historical issues with the shared fields, that those issues are being worked out, and so things looking promising, and we'll get back some more information on where we are, but looks like they might get enough volunteers, hopefully, to do some immediate repairs on that facility. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, Mr. Chang.
There's nothing to report.
Okay. Chimes and Lights. Ms.
Nothing to
Lucarelli.
report.
Waterfront Subcommittee, Mr. Childs. Outside agencies, Ms. Ashby.
Yes, I'm going to defer to Mr. Cartwright because I was out of town last week and he attended in my stead.
And he did well. I watched him on TV.
Which one, the KRCC? Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you. I did attend KRCC Tuesday morning. There were a couple of big issues. I guess the biggest one was the interlocal agreement to create the KRCC into a non-legal entity joint board of its members. There was a memo. I'm just going to read the bullet points of what was in there. It clarifies that KRCC is not a separate legal entity. It amends the definition of the associate members and ex officio members. Adds language to the executive board that manages the policies and programs of the council, authorizes the executive board to appoint one or more member agency, provides the executive director is appointed and serves at the pleasure of the executive board. There's some language in here, a couple of things. There's some language in here about the non-legal joint board looking to an already established public entity to be the administrating agency for KRCC, and the thought process would be that that administrating agency would do the hiring and of the executive board. They would be basically under the payroll of that administration agency so that they can manage payroll taxes and benefits and those types of things. And the joint board would then direct basically the hiring or firing through that administrating agency of the executive director of KRCC. I think a lot of that is yet to be determined. There was a motion to remove language from the ILA where it says employee or contracted for. There was a motion to remove that or contracted for portion of the ILA because there was a concern that if the executive director was a contract employee, they would not be able to obtain FTA or federal highway grants because the grants can't be granted to a contract employee. I'm not as sure of that as some others were, but I felt it important, and I represented Port Orchard's position that we remain flexible on that language within the ILA. We can always make that determination later not to have a contracted employee if indeed a contracted employee would prohibit the receipt of grant funds. Excuse me. So that issue actually passed overwhelmingly to not change that particular language, and I think two votes were wishing to remove that. There was discussion that I did recuse myself from in relationship to the membership status for the executive director of Kitsap Transit. Since John's my boss, even as soon as Mr. Gelder read that, issue, I beat feet out of the room and had them wave me back in when it was all over. So the ILA was actually passed as it was drafted with no changes, and then there was a further motion afterwards that the Kitsap Transit Executive Director position will be an associate member, full dues paying, non-voting position on KRCC, if that makes sense, but that's what it was. So don't ask me why, wasn't in the room. There was another particular issue in KRCC. Oh, it's about the administrating agency. So they're going to look soon to solicit interested entities to be the administrating agency for KRCC's executive director. And then they're going to be quickly working on the development of the executive director recruitment package. So there should be some more on that. And that's it on KRCC. I had one other.
I think you missed one when I watched it on TV.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There was a discussion about the housing element and moving it to the county, and that there's a funding deficiency. I think our proportionate share will be similar to Paulsbo in the couple $1,000s range. That's what happens when you can't sleep at night. You watch things you shouldn't watch.
I appreciate that. There is a $12,000 shortfall in the 2014 budget because some permits didn't come in as anticipated, permit fees didn't come in as anticipated. So there was a motion, and it was approved, that the current proportional share of the entity's dues would be applied to the $12,000 to close out the 2014 budget. So whatever our normal portion of the dues is, and it's probably going to be about $1,000, so we'll have to write a check, something like that. Thank you, Rob. I forgot about that. The other outside, excuse me, the other outside agency that I attended was the West Sound Alliance Group on Friday afternoon here, and thanks to Mayor and staff for hosting that. And it was a meeting to get the West Sound Alliance members to start basically coordinating emails and meetings with other stakeholders and interested parties within the community that when the time comes, basically it's kind of a grassroots type of social media reach out to the legislators to let them know these are the agenda items we wish to see in a transportation budget. And several of those are on the Port Orchard list, but it's, as you know, the geographical region. And so I have forwarded that information to Beck so she can continue with her work on that committee. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any others? Yes.
I have, Kitsap Transit doesn't meet till next week, so I'll report at our next council meeting. One other, I just want to throw this out to our group. Commissioner Garrido spoke at the South Kitsap Rotary Club today, and one of the things she spoke to, and I asked her to provide a formal request to us on this. There's legislation related to public facility districts, and our county has one, and the current law only allows future funding to go to existing areas that have existing projects. Bremerton, so the eligible areas in our county are Bremerton, the fairgrounds, and there's a location up north that escapes me. We are ineligible to get any funding, and our citizens pay this tax.
The time they did that, what, 2004, we just didn't happen to have a project.
We didn't have a project.
And so now we're locked out.
We're locked out. So there's legislation afoot to open that back up. And so I asked her to forward me an email, and I saw no reason that we shouldn't have our lobbyists support that legislation if it comes to fruition. So I just wanted to share that with the group. If I get the email, I'll send it to Brandy, and then
start the process.
We can start that process. That's all I have.
Mr. Chang, did you have?
I did, because I saw it on our agenda that you mentioned the 125th city anniversary meeting.
We're going to get a report on that.
Oh, okay. Well, I attended last night.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you going to give the report, or is Brandy?
No.
Okay. Well,
would you?
We both attended, and it's still in the early stages. A couple highlights that I thought were noteworthy were we have a lot of people that were on the 100th anniversary of the city's incorporation. The 125th, even though it's called Centennial, the correct word is actually Quasquicentennial. And it hasn't really caught on because we're still saying Centennial.
I just call it 125th.
Well, yeah. Or,
that's the best way.
Maybe we can get someone to make a rap song about it. But some of the items that came up last night that I hadn't seen since I wasn't here in the last Centennial was a game called The Game of Port Orchard. It looks a lot like Monopoly, but it had squares for local businesses. And the feeling is that the committee would prefer that the service clubs take on projects like this and produce it and get the fundraising. So there are lots of neat ideas about that. And I guess I'll let Brandy talk about the rest at her time.
Okay, is there anybody else that has any? Yes.
The Kitsap Economic Development Alliance had their decision makers breakfast. I don't know how many were there, but I know that you were there, right?
No.
Oh, you weren't there, but
I was there.
you were there. I was there. Jeff was there. John was there. And it's basically a kind of forecasting state of the economy kind of breakfast. I always look forward to it, and it's always very informative. They talked a little bit, in short, they talked about interest rates will probably inch up a little bit the rest of this year, but 2015 will be a little bit like 2014, not a lot of changes. And one of the things they did was they had a panel discussion and were soliciting input about the comp plan and using cell phones to basically allow people to put forward this information. And as we heard again today, Charlotte said when we heard her at Rotary, Cindy and Rob and I talked about how helpful that was and how that process might be used in the future for other meetings and stuff, for people to be able to put their cell phone input in, and that information will be automatically recorded and then can be compiled and, you know, just like we're talking about tonight for future meetings. So I don't know if we can ever...
It was a live survey, so as respondents were typing in there, you'd see the bars move. It was cool.
Yeah. So anyway, we did that, and I just wanted to also inform everyone that the next KEDA meeting is the first quarter full board meeting, and that'll be the 19th of February. That's it.
Okay. Any others? All right. Move on to the mayor's report. We, in fact, did host the West Sound Alliance, and there's a lot of folks out there that are not familiar with the West Sound Alliance. The West Sound Alliance is a remarkable partnership. 19 municipal and private entities joined together. We began, the first meeting was in July 2014 to address joint traffic congestion concerns here on the west side of Puget Sound. The municipalities include Kitsap County, Mason County, and Pierce County, as well as the major cities, transit organizations, ports, chambers of commerce, and economic development agencies. It was really neat to be at the first meeting and be at a lot of the other meetings to see this come together so quickly. The West Sound Alliance, you'll hear it now, it's West Sound Alliance. It's the three entities that really have a lot of things at stake together. So next council meeting, I'm going to give or show you a short video that the West Sound Alliance produced and we helped to pay for, and then tell you a little more about the Alliance, because it's going to be very important as we move forward on the transportation package from the state. So anyhow, I never thought that I'd be saying that in just a little over 6 months, that we've put this alliance together with this many different groups, and it's working beautifully so far. So anyway, that's my report for tonight. Let's see. Department heads, Mr. Dorsey.
I would like to say I have a 20-minute transportation update, but I'll pass.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Martin.
I am going to say to folks that I want to thank my employer. As some of you know, that our son was injured in a rock climbing accident on January 3rd, and I rushed out of here rather quickly. But I can tell you that he was injured quite a bit, but thanks to he fell in front of a backwoods paramedic and 2 EMTs. They had the foresight to call in a medevac helicopter. He was in surgery in a regional trauma center down in Arizona within 3 hours, and we talked to the doctor. After a 3-hour operation to move his brain back, is how they said it, and an hour to close. He woke up. He is doing fine. He should be released on the 12th, we believe. He is a very thankful young man, and thanks to a good surgeon and a little bit of animal health of youth, he survived it. So a lot of people have asked about that, and I just want to thank you for your concerns and the prayers, and we've been really blessed, so thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bond?
My apologies for the confusion on the annexation provision. It's a poorly worded law, but I was also out injured for the end of last week, and so I was doing some of this stuff from home. But we'll get it straightened out and have it for you at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. No record, Miss Morse, Miss Reinerson.
I have a couple things. So one of them is I did receive an email from the KRCC staff asking which meeting in February would be ideal for Mary McClure to come in and present to the council the contract changes to the ILA. I know next week's pretty full. Do you want her to come and present something at the February 24th regular council meeting under presentations? She specifically requested it in February, so I don't know what the council would like to do.
It's really new information.
Well, she wanted 45 minutes, right, originally.
45.
And I said we could do it in 20 or 30.
How about 10?
It really isn't. I think, we're spinning off. Basically, it's like a corporation spinning off part of the company is what we're doing. So,
with the
Folks
heavy...
talked about it at length at the KRCC meeting that I watched, this language change. It's not...
We need to ratify it?
And we have to ratify it. And we've been talking about it for a year. I can't believe she needs 45 minutes.
We don't all like it.
Okay, well... You get a vote.
Yeah. I believe because there is a time element as far as KRCC is concerned, that I would be supportive of having her come and do a presentation at the February 24th meeting.
Yeah.
And limit it to 10, 15 minutes?
Yeah, tell her that would
tops,
be
15
adequate,
tops, because and give us an executive summary.
Okay.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And then just to let you guys know that the waste management contract will be expiring in June of 2015. Mark and I had met with them a few weeks ago, and then the mayor and I had met with them at the tail end of 2014. So they've exhausted all of their renewal options, so they will be bringing forth a new contract for the city to look at. Based on our conversations, pretty much everything's going to be the same. They're going to provide it to me by the end of the month. We're going to review it, get it to legal counsel to review, their legal counsel review, AWC will review. So hopefully we'll get it back to you March, April for review and final adoption by May, June. And then the 125th anniversary committee meeting was last night. The next one will be March 2nd. And there's a lot of excitement among the community. They've talked about a marble tournament. They actually had read one of the Independence article. What they say? They called themselves the #1 manufacturing marble company in the United States. They found out about it, and they're hoping that we move forward with a tournament, and if they do, they're going to possibly donate all of the marbles for that tournament. So the Saints Car Club was ecstatic about it, and they're looking forward to it, so they're going to reach out to that organization to see what they can come up with.
Not just
for that
about
day.
the marbles. They were ecstatic about the whole process, right?
Yeah. And they're also one of the members of who's also a Saints Car Club, is also representing the South Kitsap Fire District. So he's very excited. He's going to bring that back to the district to see what kind of things that they can offer. It's great. It's going to be good. So I encourage everybody to come if they can at the next meeting.
When's the date? When's the date?
It is September 5th. It's a Saturday, so it'll go very well with the festivities that's already planned for Sunday. It's just kind of a kickoff on that Saturday to have a bunch of events. What was I going to say? There's something else. I'll That's all I can think about.
I think still farmers market on Saturday, right?
Yeah, we'll have to double check to see if the farmers market has put in for that. If so, I'm sure they'd be accommodating.
There'll be that, and I think an art walk probably be still going. And we'll have a lot of things going probably.
Oh, there is one thing I wanted to mention. So the committee has decided that it would be a nice opportunity for the community to create a 125th City of Port Orchard logo. So they are soliciting out to the public for the public to submit a logo, and then the committee will pick a logo, and that will be on all of the printed materials as well as any, what do you call it? Organizations. Any organizations can use that logo throughout it, throughout the celebration season. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
That's all I have.
Okay. Citizen comments. Please, would you come up? Give us your comments.
Excuse me. One of the things I wanted to talk about was I would like the idea of the citizens being involved early on the comprehensive plan, not just because we went through it with the University of Washington. Some of us are here because when the downtown overlay was being discussed, we came in at the end because we didn't know about it. And it didn't matter what we said on this side of the fence. We didn't feel we were being heard. And because things had been old news for so long for the people sitting up there, in fact, I believe that 2 of the members up there now are because they felt that on this side of the fence at that point in time. So I would like to be involved early, because once it's written down, there's not much input taken at that point in time. And the second thing is I read something not too long ago about there's, excuse me, plans for a racetrack someplace up by the industrial park for Bremerton. And that is going to change our quality of life here. And I don't feel for the good. I know that I have friends that live out toward Glenwood, and when the racing is on the weekend or whenever they have the racing, they listen to that noise all weekend long. And that's not of the scale of what these people are talking about. I believe that the going through Gorst will become almost impossible for some of us. The way I understand it, some of the people that are proponents for this don't live in our area. And I would like them to have it in where they live and not where we live. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Please.
Hi.
Hello.
I probably don't need this.
Yeah, pull that all the way up, because
I really probably don't need it.
Okay.
My name is Ann Savatasi, and I have a question for you, Mr. Dorsey. With the comprehensive plan, that we need the PACE engineers and the BHC consultants for a sewer plan update and a water system plan update. Well, we're already paying so much money out for a gap analysis. Why isn't this sort of doing the same thing?
Well, it is.
Then why are we paying 2 different entities so much money to do the same thing?
The gap analysis was a 2014 task that had those consultants update the capital improvement plans enough to do that gap analysis. Now those same firms are now moving ahead with the actual the plan element updates, which that's a large body of work to update your 6-year plan. So there is crossover that's already been accounted for, but they're different. The work that ultimately the council will decide on the gap analysis, that information that's been provided will then fold into the comprehensive plan elements once the council decides and makes those decisions on the rates. So they're interdependent, but they overlap and there's some coordination, but they're separate tasks. If you look at the scope of work for a gap analysis and a scope of work for a plan update, they have their own scope.
Okay, so we're basically, the city is basically paying 3 separate companies.
Well, as Nick said before, you've got the comprehensive plan, which is just pulling elements into that plan. The city's required to update through the Growth Management Act their plans, their system plans. That's what this task is.
Right.
So those plan updates that are mandated by the state so that we can get federal funding are what we're complying with.
Right, and the comprehensive plan update is also required by the state, correct?
Right, but we also are required by the Department of Health, Department of Ecology, to update our system plans and show that we are managing the fund and the utility. The fiduciary responsibility to manage that fund is also a requirement of a plan.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and just a note too. The amount of work required to justify the fact that we need to bring utilities to our annexed areas also increases with annexation. So I mean, and that's kind of worked into some of these estimates also, that they have to bring us up to speed and show our processes, make sense. So, yes.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, I have a question, then an observation. The question is pretty much for Mark. When the update to the system out in the Sedgwick-Sydney intersection, did it provide enough capacity to serve all of the anticipated needs for the intersection at this point? I was presuming that the update that had to do with the rebate that was going to be granted to the developer.
The Pottery Pump Station has been designed for that entire basin that was studied in the 2008 Sewer Comprehensive Plan. So yes, all those properties within that basin are part of the Pottery Pump Station. There's still improvements needed to the Albertsons pump station for any future development. But luckily, the city was able to acquire ownership of that pump station. So future developers, and I'm going to say Stetson because they're the one that's currently in line, will be required to rebuild that pump station and increase its capacity. And they will more than likely put a latecomers on that improvement. So,
Yeah. How about water?
Water system, the issue with water was getting the Bremerton wholesale water agreement in place, which we have done until well 10's online. So now that we have Bremerton under a new ILA, there is no moratorium potential out there right now.
Okay. So with a little more update money than to the sewer system, they should be able to handle it all then, right?
Yeah, once Albertson's pump station is in line, that should definitely create sewer capacity beyond my tenure.
Okay, good. Then I just had an observation about this discussion on the comprehensive plan. Mark admitted that it's a huge undertaking. It's a requirement of the state. In fact, it's a necessity of the city because you don't qualify for grant funds unless you meet your update your comp plan. And but then I noticed that most of the city council doesn't seem to be on board with the process at this point. The mayor's had staff working on it so far, and it seems to me we got a little bit the cart before the horse. And he did mention that a visioning study would be a good idea. That seems to me like that should have been on the front end of this deal, because how can you work on a plan unless you have an understanding of what the plan is supposed to accomplish at the end? So I suppose if I was going to sit here and just tell you what I think, it would be that you get the visioning plan done, then get that information before the planning commission so they can do their hard work. And they're kind of the workhorses anyway of disseminating information and figuring out what to suggest to the city council, and let that process happen so that you guys can make good decision with the help of the public to put forward a good plan with a vision in mind. Yes. So just an observation. Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay. Is that a hand up back there? No? Okay. All right. We have no executive session, so if nobody objects, let's go home. We're adjourned.